music, the costumes, the hair. There's only one ABBA. And after decades of going their own way, the Swedish supergroup is back.
ABBA wasn't just a band, they were a global phenomenon. 4 young Swedes, 2 real-life couples, and 1 unforgettable sound. From Dancing Queen to Mamma Mia, their music lit up the world. They had charm, style, and hits that never stopped. But behind the bright lights and catchy songs, things started to fall apart. The relationships cracked, tensions grew, and soon the music stopped. For years, fans were left guessing, what really ended ABBA? Why did it all turn so cold? Now, after decades, the truth is finally coming out. Join us as we uncover the bitter ending of ABBA's golden era and see what really tore the world's most beloved pop group apart. How 4 talented stars came together. Before ABBA became a world-famous pop group, each member had their own music journey. Agnetha Faltskog started young. Born in Jönköping, Sweden in 1950, she was only 18 when her song Jag Varsa Kar hit #1 in Sweden. She wrote and sang it herself. It sold over 80,000 copies, which was a big deal back then. People quickly noticed her talent. She kept writing and singing songs in a style called Schlager, which was very popular in Sweden. She also covered other songs, performed in parks, and released 4 solo albums between 1968 and 1971. Björn Ulvaeus, born in 1945 in Gothenburg, was also making music by the time he was 18. He was in a group called the Hootenanny Singers. They were known for folk and skiffle music. He started writing English songs and had a short solo career too. Björn met Benny Andersson in 1966, and they wrote their first song together, Isn't It Easy to Say? That song was later recorded by Benny's band, the Hep Stars. Stig Andersson, the Hootenanny Singers' manager, saw great potential in their songwriting and pushed them to create more music. Benny Andersson was born in Stockholm in 1946 and joined the Hep Stars when he was just 18. That band was so famous people called them the Swedish Beatles. Benny played keyboard and wrote songs that topped the charts like Sunny Girl and Wedding. He even set up a business like the Beatles' Apple Corps called Hep House. In 1969, Benny met singer Anni-Frid during Melodifestivalen, a music competition. They became a couple soon after. Björn and Agnetha met the same year during a TV special and got married in 1971. That's how the group started forming, not just through music, but also through real-life relationships. Small steps before the big break. Before they were ABBA, the 4 worked together in small ways. In 1970, the 2 couples took a trip to Cyprus. They sang together just for fun on the beach, but it turned into a live show for United Nations soldiers stationed there. Around that same time, Benny and Björn were recording their first joint album, Lika. Agnetha and Anni-Frid added backing vocals to some tracks. That summer, they came up with a live act called Festfolket, which means party people or engaged couples. It was a cabaret-style show that launched in Gothenburg in November 1970. Sadly, the show didn't get great reviews except for one song, Hedge Gamla Man, Hello Old Man. That song featured all 4 members and became their first hit, reaching #5 on the Swedish charts and #1 on a popular radio chart called Svensktoppen. Even though their stage show didn't do well, they kept working together in the studio. In 1971, they started singing on each other's tracks more often. Björn, Agnetha, and Benny even went on tour together, while Anni-Frid performed solo. Their closeness grew through these recording sessions, and by the summer they were spending more time together both professionally and personally. Benny and Björn released more songs, and the women's voices were featured more and more. In 1972, a song they wrote, Sagdet med en sång, Say It With a Song, was performed by a new singer named Lena Andersson at Melodifestivalen. It came in 3rd place, but became a hit. That win gave them hope. At the same time, something unexpected happened. She's My Kind of Girl, a song by Benny and Björn, became a top 10 hit in Japan. It was a surprise, but it showed that their music could work outside Sweden. A new sound, a new name. In 1972, the 4 released a new song together called People Need Love. This time, the women were not just backup singers. They were front and center. The song was credited to Bjorn and Benny, Agnetha, and Anni-Frid. It wasn't a huge hit in Sweden but did well enough to give them confidence. Interestingly, it was also their first song to make it onto the US charts, though not very high. In the US, the group was called Bjorn and Benny with Svenska flicka, which means Swedish girl. But their small American label, Playboy Records, didn't have the ability to push the song more. In 1973, they tried again to enter Melodifestivalen with a song called Ring Ring. They used a new sound style called the Wall of Sound, created by their sound engineer Michael B. Tretow. This style would later become their signature sound. Famous songwriters Neil Sedaka and Phil Cody helped write the English version. Although the song came in third and didn't go to Eurovision, they still released their first full album, Ring Ring. The album became popular in parts of Europe and South Africa. Around this time, Agnetha gave birth to her daughter and couldn't travel for a bit, so someone else filled in briefly during a trip to West Germany. In 1973, their manager, Stig Andersson, thought the group's long name was too much. He began calling them ABBA instead. It was short, catchy, and easy to remember. But ABBA was also the name of a fish canning company in Sweden, so the band had to ask for permission to use it. The fish company said yes, as long as the group didn't make the name look bad. According to Agnetha, the company told them, "Okay, as long as you don't make us feel ashamed for what you're doing." A logo, a look, and a future. The name ABBA was made using the first letters of each member's name: Agnetha, Bjorn, Benny, and Anni-Frid. No one ever confirmed who stood for which letter, but the name worked. The first time ABBA showed up on paper was in October 1973 during a studio session. It was written on a sheet as Bjorn, Benny, Agnetha, and Frida, but someone crossed that out and wrote ABBA in big letters instead. In 1976, their logo was created. It had something special, a backward B. This famous logo was made during a photo shoot for a German teen magazine called Bravo. The band members held big letters of their names, and Benny accidentally held his B the wrong way. The photographer liked it, and they decided to keep it that way. From that day on, the mirrored B became part of their official logo. It made their name stand out. The first time fans saw the logo was on a French album called Golden Double Album. Later, when a big music company called Polygram bought their music, they started using a different version of the logo. In 1992, they even added a crown for the ABBA Gold album. But after Universal Music took over, the original ABBA logo came back. And that's the one we all recognize today. Behind the scenes, everything was lining up. The music, the name, the look. They were no longer just four singers trying things out. They were ABBA. The journey was long, full of twists, songs, and surprises. But what seemed like a perfect story would soon take a turn. The song that changed everything. In 1973, ABBA still hadn't cracked the big time. They had tried entering Sweden's Melodifestivalen with Ring Ring, but it didn't make it to Eurovision. Still, their manager Stig Andersson believed in them. He thought Eurovision could help people notice them, not just as performers but as real songwriters. When Swedish television invited them to compete in the 1974 contest, they came back stronger. They chose a new upbeat song called Waterloo, inspired by the glam rock scene in the UK. By then, the group had more experience and confidence. On February 9th, they won over the Swedish audience. Then, on April 6, 1974, they performed Waterloo in English at the Eurovision final and won it all. That night, they celebrated in the Napoleon Suite at the Grand Brighton Hotel. Waterloo became their first #1 hit in 9 European countries. It also made the top 10 in Australia, Canada, and France, and reached #6 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the US. Their win brought them fame across Europe. They toured major TV shows and visited new markets. Critics in the US praised their debut Waterloo album, with the Los Angeles Times calling it compelling and fascinating, and Cream saying it had exceptional, lovable compositions. But fame comes with pressure, and now they had to prove they weren't just Eurovision stars. After Eurovision, highs and lows. Following Waterloo, ABBA released Honey Honey, which reached #27 in the US and did well in Europe, but the UK took a different path. Instead of Honey Honey, the UK label re-released Ring Ring, which failed to make the top 30. This led people to question if ABBA was just a one-hit wonder. In late 1974, they began their first European tour, visiting Denmark, Germany, and Austria. But many shows had poor ticket sales. Some were even cancelled, like the one in Switzerland. However, their 1975 tour in Scandinavia turned things around. Every venue sold out. Bjorn later said, "We were trying to be more like The Sweet, which was stupid because we were always a pop group." They got back to their style and released So Long in the UK, but it got no radio play and didn't chart. Then came I Do, I Do, I Do, I Do, I Do, which barely made it to number 38 in the UK, but hit number 1 in South Africa and reached the top 5 across Europe. Their self-titled album, ABBA, brought them back in full force. SOS became a hit, reaching number 6 in the UK and number 1 in Germany and Australia. Mamma Mia came next and topped the charts in the UK, Australia, and Germany. In the US, SOS and I Do both reached number 15. Mamma Mia peaked at 32 but helped build their American presence. The songs also did well in Canada. While singles were taking off, their album still struggled in the US, showing they had more work to do. Chart toppers and worldwide fame. In early 1976, ABBA released Greatest Hits, their first compilation album. It became their first number 1 album in the UK and reached the top 50 in the US. It also featured a new track, Fernando. That song became a global success, topping charts in over 13 countries, including the UK, Australia, Germany, France, and South Africa. It even sold more than 10 million copies worldwide. In Australia, it stayed at number 1 for 14 weeks and remained on the charts for 40 weeks. That record lasted over 40 years. Fernando also won Best Studio Recording of 1975. In the US, it made it to number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became ABBA's first number 1 on the Adult Contemporary chart. In Germany, The Very Best of ABBA topped the charts while Greatest Hits reached number 2. Then came the album Arrival. It was number 1 in Europe and Australia and reached number 3 in Canada and Japan. Critics praised the album for its songwriting and sound. It gave fans more hits. Money, Money, Money was number 1 in Germany and France and number 3 in the UK. Knowing Me, Knowing You also topped charts across Europe and hit number 9 in Australia. But the biggest success was Dancing Queen. It was number 1 almost everywhere, including the UK, Australia, Japan, the Soviet Union, and even the US. ABBA's only American chart topper. In South Africa, Fernando, Dancing Queen, and Knowing Me, Knowing You were all among the top 20 best-selling singles of 1976-77. Knowing Me, Knowing You reached number 7 in the US, but Money, Money, Money struggled there. Still, the album Arrival did better than the others, reaching number 20 on the Billboard 200 and earning gold status. ABBA was now one of the most successful pop acts worldwide, but they hadn't toured on a major scale yet. Lights, crowds, and pressure on tour. In January 1977, ABBA launched their first big tour, starting in Oslo, Norway. It included scenes from their mini-musical The Girl with the Golden Hair and covered major cities like Berlin, Amsterdam, and London. At the Royal Albert Hall, they played 2 sold-out shows. While Cream magazine praised their performance, Melody Maker criticized their lack of stage presence. Next, they headed to Australia, performing 11 concerts for 160,000 fans. One Sydney show, attended by 20,000 people, was hit with rain, and Anni-Frid even slipped on stage. But ABBA later said that show was one of the most memorable moments of their career. In Melbourne, 6,000 fans crowded the town hall just to see them on a balcony, while another 16,000 stood outside the venue. In Adelaide, 20,000 attended the concert with 10,000 more listening outside. In Perth, a bomb scare forced evacuation, but the show continued. The Australian tour sparked media frenzy. Variety magazine compared it to the attention of a royal visit. Everything was captured in ABBA, the movie, directed by Lasse Hallström. But the growing fame brought pressure, especially for Agnetha. Often labeled as the group's pin-up girl, she wore a tight white jumpsuit during the tour. One headline read, "Agnetha's bottom tops dull show." She responded, "Don't they have bottoms in Australia?" A line that reflected both her humor and discomfort. Underneath the glitter, ABBA was starting to feel the toll of stardom. ABBA, the album to Voulez-Vous. By December 1977, ABBA released their fifth studio album, ABBA, the album, along with the film ABBA, the movie. While UK critics were lukewarm, fans worldwide embraced the music. The record delivered two mega hits, The Name of the Game and Take a Chance on Me. The former dominated in Scandinavia and Australia. The latter topped charts in North America and Europe, even outperforming Dancing Queen in the US. The album also featured Eagle and Thank You for the Music. Although never released as a single, the latter became a timeless fan favorite. The album topped charts in Sweden, Norway, Switzerland, and the UK. In Poland alone, it sold over 1 million copies, and demand in Russia outpaced supply. ABBA's reach was now truly global. In 1978, ABBA invested in themselves, turning an old Stockholm cinema into Polar Music Studio, soon one of Europe's best recording studios. Major acts like Genesis and Led Zeppelin would later use the space. That year, the group recorded Summer Night City, a disco-influenced track that gave them trouble in the studio but still turned into a hit. Then in 1979, ABBA performed Chiquitita at the Music for UNICEF concert at the UN, donating all royalties to UNICEF. The song topped charts in 10 countries, but personal cracks were forming. In January 1979, Bjorn and Agnetha announced their divorce. Though it shocked fans, the group promised to keep making music. Bjorn and Benny escaped to the Bahamas to write new material quietly. What they came back with marked a new musical chapter. In April 1979, ABBA dropped Voulez-Vous, recorded partly in Miami with engineer Tom Dowd. The album had a fresh, dance-heavy sound and reached #1 across Europe, Japan, and Mexico. Chiquitita and I Have a Dream hit #2 in the UK, while Does Your Mother Know and Angelias entered the top 5. Gimme, 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 A Man After Midnight became a massive hit and helped their Greatest Hits Vol. 2 album reach #1 in the UK, Canada, and Japan. In the Soviet Union, where Western currency was banned, ABBA was so popular that the USSR paid them in oil. In September 1979, they kicked off ABBA, the tour in Edmonton, Canada. They performed 17 sold-out shows across North America. Though Agnetha skipped one U.S. show due to anxiety after a rough flight, they closed the tour in Toronto before 18,000 fans. The U.S. press praised their technical precision and vocal clarity. The final years, from hits to silence. ABBA's 1980 tour in Japan, 11 concerts including 6 sold-out shows at Tokyo's Budokan, was their last. That year, they released The Winner Takes It All. Many believed it reflected Bjorn and Agnetha's divorce, though both denied it was personal. The song became their 8th UK #1 and cracked the US top 10. Then came the album Super Trooper, which sold over 1 million copies before its release, setting a record. The title track topped the UK charts, and Lay All Your Love on Me dominated US dance charts. Around the same time, ABBA recorded a Spanish-language album, Gracias por la Música, which was especially successful in Latin America and Japan. But more personal shifts followed. In 1981, Bjorn married Lena Kallersjö. That same year, Benny and Frida divorced. Still, the group moved forward with their 8th album, The Visitors. Its darker tone reflected the emotional changes they were going through. One of Us reached #3 in the UK and, when all is said and done, became their last US top 40 hit. By 1982, their popularity was waning outside Europe. They recorded 2 new songs, The Day Before You Came and Under Attack, and included them in their final release, The Singles, The First 10 Years. Under Attack became their last single as a group. ABBA's final live appearance came in December 1982 on The Late Late Breakfast Show. Bjorn later said, "We might have continued for a while longer if that had been a #1, but it wasn't." And just like that, ABBA stopped. Agnetha and Frida went solo. Benny and Bjorn moved into musical theater, writing chess. No press conference, no dramatic farewell, just silence. For years, people wondered what really tore them apart. The answer wasn't just fame, fatigue, or fading charts. It was love, too bruised to survive the spotlight. When love started to fade. ABBA's story had always been built on love, but behind the music, that love slowly started to fall apart. Agnetha and Bjorn were already married when ABBA became famous. They were young, passionate, and full of hope. But the pressure of constant travel, long tours, and fame began to wear them down. After years of balancing family life with the band's demanding schedule, they divorced in 1979. For Agnetha, the breakup was devastating. Reports later said she was emotionally mangled after the split, especially when Bjorn moved on with someone new just a week later. She admitted she needed therapy to recover. Still, the band pushed on, and their emotions found their way into their music. Around that time, ABBA released The Winner Takes It All, a song that mirrored their heartbreak. Bjorn wrote it, but Agnetha was the one who sang the words that hit so close to home. "Tell me, does she kiss like I used to kiss you?" Years later, Agnetha revealed, "Bjorn wrote it about us after the breakdown of our marriage. The fact he wrote it exactly when we divorced is touching, really." She said performing it didn't feel wrong because it came from a place of truth. "It was a mixture of what I felt and what Bjorn felt, but also what Benny and Frida went through," she added. Even as their marriage ended, the music stayed honest. But behind the stage smiles, there was deep pain. "We always told the media that it was a happy divorce," Agnetha later admitted in her book, As I Am, which of course was a front. Obviously, we all know there are no such things as happy divorces, especially when there are children involved. The tension was growing, and though they still performed together, the emotional distance was becoming impossible to hide. The second heartbreak. While Agnetha and Bjorn tried to stay professional, Benny and Frida were facing their own struggles. They had been together since 1969 and married in 1978 at the peak of ABBA's fame. But just 2 years later, they too separated and finalized their divorce in 1981. Benny admitted at the time, "I don't know how other people deal with things like this. Frida and I are still friends, and I'm still a member of ABBA. We are still good friends, but we are not married anymore." The split came after Benny confessed he had met someone else, TV producer Mona Norklet, whom he married later that same year. Despite the heartbreak, both Benny and Frida tried to stay civil. "We discussed what was going to remain in the group in spite of all we have been through," Benny said. "We decided to stay together for the sake of the music." Frida, though heartbroken, echoed that sentiment. "Now that Benny and I have broken up, we are able to work much better together. Our relationship is not as intense as it was, but we are still in contact." She explained that their split was not full of drama, just painful honesty. "We have always been very honest about relationships," she said. "After long and hard talks, we decided to go our separate ways. We simply grew out of each other. It came down to our different goals in life." Her words showed that even though there was sadness, there was also maturity. "There were a lot of tears and a lot of discussions," she admitted, "but there was no way back. Breaking up became a necessity." By then, both couples in ABBA had divorced, and though they continued recording for a while, the magic that once brought them together was slipping away. The studio no longer felt the same. It was filled with memories that made it hard to move forward. When the music stopped. By 1982, ABBA had tried to keep going, but something was missing. The closeness they once shared was gone. They recorded a few final songs, including The Day Before You Came and Under Attack, but the spark had faded. When they looked around the studio, it wasn't just bandmates they saw. It was ex-husbands and ex-wives trying to hold on to something that had already ended. They quietly stopped performing together, and their last TV appearance as a group came in December 1982 on The Late Late Breakfast Show. Bjorn later admitted, "We might have continued for a while longer if that had been a #1, but it wasn't." The same year, Agnetha and Frida began focusing on solo music, while Benny and Bjorn started writing their musical chess. The band never officially announced a breakup, but everyone knew it was over. The divorces had made it too painful to carry on. The bond that once made them special had now become a reminder of what they had lost. In the years that followed, they rarely appeared together. The media often asked about a reunion, but ABBA stayed silent. For them, it wasn't just a matter of business, it was emotional. Too many memories, too much pain. Yet, even after they parted ways, their music continued to live on, keeping their story alive in every generation that discovered it. The long road, back to each other. It took decades for ABBA to reunite again. The four members were first seen together in the 2000s at the Mamma Mia musical premiere, but it wasn't until 2018 that they decided to record again. What started as 2 songs turned into a full comeback album, Voyage, released in 2021, nearly 40 years after they last worked together. Alongside the new music came the ABBA Voyage concert, featuring lifelike digital versions of their younger selves, known as avatars. The project brought the band's story full circle. Bjorn shared how emotional it felt to be back in the studio. "I looked around and I looked into Agnetha's eyes and Frida's eyes, and there was the same kind of feeling, the warmth and the friendship," he said. "You suddenly realize no one on earth has experienced this kind of relationship that we have." It was a moment of closure after decades apart. In later interviews, Bjorn expressed how proud he was that they remained on good terms despite everything. "Sadly, people die and they don't stay on friendly terms for their whole lives, but we have," he said, "and I'm so incredibly happy for that." Their return wasn't rushed, it was thoughtful and nostalgic. Fans were overjoyed when ABBA announced Voyage in 2021 with singles like "I Still Have Faith in You" and "Don't Shut Me Down." The album became their first new music in 40 years. The group also launched a virtual concert residency in London, where their digital versions performed with a live band. Agnetha said it was likely their final group project. But even then, Frida told fans, "Don't be too sure." Their reunion proved that even though love had once torn them apart, time and music brought them back together. In 2024, 50 years after their Eurovision win, all four members were honored by the King of Sweden with the Royal Order of Vasa. They didn't need another comeback performance. Just standing together again was proof that some bonds, no matter how tested, never truly break. Do you think ABBA's story would have been different if love hadn't gotten in the way of their music? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.